I'm Randy.
I'm Calvin.
And we are the original security guys.
Okay, we got another video. Today's a special video. We get to talk about my partner here, Randy Griffith. We get to learn about him and his history and who he is and how he's become to be all that he is today, and some of the horrible things that we've done together that we...
Undisclosed.
Okay, Randy, we've known each other over 20 years now.
Yes.
Over 20 years.
Quit doing that. You're dating us.
I know, right? Because I just started yesterday.
Yeah.
I'm still 20
Plus.
yeah, that's our age, right? That's our age. 20 years. We started cybersecurity stuff together. It was kind of out of necessity. I don't think it was the kind of thing of, ooh, we have a security job, necessarily when we first started. Back then, it was not actually called security.
It was just called keep everything from crashing.
Yeah, it was keep everything going. All right, so start talking about yourself. Tell us a little bit about, where you started with your IT, that background, and the things that you did, maybe even before we met.
Well, before we met, even in high school, I enjoyed programming, BASIC, Fortran, and a few others, Pascal. Was decent at it. Looked at going to college for computer engineering, and my mom convinced me that I needed a job that was going to stick around for a while, and those computers were never going to last. So I went with finance and graduated with a degree in finance, and then slowly trickled back into the IT thing back about 1995.
95, okay, yeah. And with that, you then went to work for the University of Oklahoma, right?
Yeah, that was February of 95.
Okay.
I was working on installing networks. Lots
Cable monkey.
Mm-hmm, lots of cable monkey. I didn't know white from blue back then, but yeah, I was a cable monkey.
Yeah.
Pulled
Okay.
miles and miles of Cat5.
Yeah.
The crew that was cabling the dorms would go through 15,000 feet a day.
Wow. And just think about when you first started that, you would have no idea how important and vital that skill set would be to cybersecurity.
Absolutely not. No clue whatsoever.
It's not what you think about.
Nope.
On cable, and it's going to be vital to cybersecurity and the security efforts that were going on at the time.
And now the installation of the cable is paramount, because once it's done, it's there for a long period of time. It's got to be installed in a certain fashion, or electronic devices, lights, fluorescent lights, electric motors cause interference, and it's a lot of fun to try to troubleshoot all that.
You went through the transition there where it was just get it installed to, hang on just a minute, we need to do this in a methodical, well-planned out way that's bigger than a building here and there. Is an entire system that spanned the entire campus and multiple colleges, multiple departments, and it all had to be managed and
all had to be managed, had to be installed in a certain fashion. We came up with IP schemes for each building. That way, when we had an event occur, we kind of knew where to start looking.
Yeah. So, when at what point did you transition from just cable to actual equipment, device installation, and configuration?
So while I was working with the crew that was installing for the dorms, I was just doing networks. I spent some time working with a full-time employee, became his lackey, for lack of a better phrase. He was the fiber technician, so I learned how to polish glass. and worked with him to do a lot of installs. And then eventually I learned enough that I started doing my own installs and became rather proficient at troubleshooting. So started doing the troubleshooting and figuring out where the problem was and fixing the problem, which then just kind of led into one thing to another. I was hanging equipment, net switches, hubs. Well, we still had 10 meg hubs back then.
10 meg hubs?
Yeah. High speed bandwidth. Woo!
Okay, so you were there, obviously whenever I got there, but you were there and you kind of got thrown into cybersecurity because of your skill sets and
yeah.
Everything that you did. It became extremely valuable. I just remember when there was an incident and there would be a group of anywhere from 10 to 20 people in the room, everybody talking about the different dynamics of who's going to do what. I remember you were always in the back of the room. You would listen to find out, kind of what's happening and maybe physically where is it located on campus. And before the meeting was over, you were gone because you knew, because you installed the physical cable. So when certain things were happening and you knew exactly what was transpiring, what was it hitting, how was it communicating, how was it talking on the network, and all of those kind of things. You were there. You were able to get devices that were owned by the university before we even finished our initial meeting.
Yeah.
That generally took anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, depending on what it was.
Or, at some point in time, you guys would finally catch up with me.
This is true. This is true. Well, as much and advanced as that network got, there were still sections of the network that were never really brought up to speed just because of where they were at and the function that they served. They didn't really need more of the advanced type networking and equipment. But
well, and at that point in time, IT wasn't heavily funded, and we frequently played Swaptronics. We would have areas that were higher bandwidth, higher processing utilization. We would install new equipment there. The equipment that we pulled out of there, we would move it to another place and just move the equipment all the way down till eventually we were moving out the hubs to 10 meg switches, which was a big upgrade for them. But eventually campus got to be 100 meg switched with gig uplinks, and now it's even higher bandwidth than that.
yeah, 40 Gs, right?
Plus.
Of course, the university had to have that kind of bandwidth because of the research,
Yeah.
the weather center.
Weather
all
center.
the things that were taking place.
I can remember a certain hurricane that came through where we had permission to play whack-a-mole and anything that looked like it was going to interrupt service.
Yes, yeah. We got that a few times,
Yeah.
which obviously in September of 2001 we were kind of busy at that particular time.
Yeah, that created a little bit of excitement. We were both in College of Engineering, Felder Hall specifically, during
Yeah.
that time. And yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah,
And the events that transpired shortly thereafter were even more interesting.
yeah. Well, not able to disclose a lot of that, but yeah, let's just say that the FBI was there on campus and they were asking and they were receiving and we were helping find and turn over whatever they were looking for, and cooperating with obviously our legal counsel and all the law enforcement that was on campus, and doing everything we can to help expedite the information they needed with that particular investigation. So
Yeah. It's a little unnerving having an unmarked sedan pull up and a person in a suit get out and address you by name and hand you a piece of paper and then take it away from you.
yeah.
Those national security letters. Ugh.
Those were fun times.
They were definitely interesting. And, the parties that we were doing investigations into, I've got no, it was what needed to happen at that point in time.
Yeah, but it was, I got quickly introduced to what we now know in the industry of the forensics world, the litigation world, of the e-discovery, where, the FBI come on campus. I mean, well, there's a crime, a serious crime that's just occurred in the United States, and the information that they're looking for is right here, and they could come in and just take everything. Well, they were not going to do that, right? There were holes in the system and the process to not allow that to happen.
Well, I can't help but think that who the president of the University of Oklahoma might have had something to do with that.
Yeah, yeah. Seeing that he still had his clearance and still regularly consulted.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But you know, one of the things that you know that you were heavily kind of a part of, some of these systems and how they operated on a regular basis from a communications perspective. You were able to help us identify where those were at, physically, where those were at, and how they operated, and solutions to help the FBI get the information they were looking for, and only the information that they were looking for. So
it was a challenge to narrow the field and not give them a fire hose instead of just giving them a water hose.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there are laws that protect the students,
Yeah.
and we still had to abide by those laws, even though there was a serious crime that had been committed, not at OU, but the parties that were involved there. So
it was interesting times.
yeah, and it wasn't the only time that we had some, you know, I would say very serious incidents to occur. You know, and the other one was the kid that blew himself up outside the football stadium
That
night of football.
instance, do you remember how many agents we had on campus?
No.
We had 67 to the best of my recollection. 67.
Well, I know there was a lot of agencies that responded and was there, I mean, almost instantly, as fast as possible.
Well, there was some of us that had agents attached to our hips.
Yeah.
And they followed us everywhere, which was rather uncomfortable trying to go to the restroom.
Well, I had two with me, and then another colleague of ours that was with us, and you know, they were being good cop, bad cop, because they had to get information really quickly, and they need to figure out are we cooperative, are we not cooperative, are we helping them find the information, and you know, at that time it was happening so fast. They needed to make sure that we were going to be helpful and not help derail whatever the investigation was. I guess they got their satisfaction, and you know, it was good. So after OU, I know you had developed some pretty good skills enough to, obviously your background with finance and your background in IT and your background in cybersecurity now led you to greater and bigger things. And about what time did you?
I wouldn't say they were greater or bigger, they were just different.
Well, it's pretty impressive to go from, you know, cybersecurity analyst to CFO, CIO of an organization, multi-million-dollar organization.
Yeah, it was about $10 million a month in revenue.
Yeah. So it wasn't nothing to sneeze at, that was for sure.
Yeah, and worked them through their first 3 certified audits and some other processes, and updated the network and redid the domain and a few other things.
Well, I know that you obviously did, you know, was in charge of their IT and security as well, and you reached out to, you know, us and consulted with us a little bit.
Yeah, well, I can't do it all.
Well, then, it would be debatable. You're pretty good. Okay, so you at some point you moved on from that, and then where did you go to work?
Well, I came back to Oklahoma. Well, I did some work with you at Calvin Weeks and Associates for a few years while we were dealing with a lot of SCADA and the gas pipeline.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting adventure, finding out that the oil and gas industry was about 15 years behind everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, the things they were dealing with, we had already passed up when we were at OU, and that was 15 years prior.
Yeah. So it was definitely a remembering curve.
Yeah.
Trying to deal with some of that stuff.
Yeah. We were dealing with some of the same issues. Issues of, how do you do, how do you implement your software to authenticate to the domain, right, to the server. They didn't do that.
No, everybody
I've never
logged in.
never heard of that before.
Everybody logged in locally.
Yeah.
Never changed their password.
Never changed their password. You were part of the design and engineering for that particular, project. That was thoroughly impressed throughout that industry. I think.
I personally, and it sounds bad because we have a colo location that we're friends with the owner. I think they do an awesome job, but I think the biggest testament to the job that we did there was the loss of the transformer inside the building that crippled half the building, but yet only interrupted one process that we had, one system.
Yeah, just one system. And they called us and like, we're sorry. We're sorry for what? Well, the system's down. I'm like, no, we're still up and running.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know, when you're dealing with a gas pipeline and SCADA systems, you have to maintain positive control 24/7.
Yeah.
And this was done through the computers, through the network, on and on and on. And we had achieved that, and they had a major power outage. Half of the building was down, the transformer had blown, but because of the way it was architected, power-wise, it just failed over to the other side and just kept right on working. So it was very impressive. Took them a few days to get a new transformer in, but we just moved that one device to the other side and got power back up, and it was back up and running in minutes.
Yeah, yeah. That was pretty amazing. The whole design and engineering of that particular system was designed intentionally to be high availability and redundant, so that no matter what system had problems or what failed or what was going on in the real world, they could always stay connected or be connected within a matter of minutes, couple of minutes. And we tested that, but there was nothing like that real test whenever that transformer blew. But we didn't even know.
Yeah.
They called us and said, we're sorry, we're down. We're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. We're still up and running. And then the system that went down was one of the phone systems.
Yeah.
But of course they had cell phones, so there was no significant impact at all to what they were doing. There was times when whatever was going on, they did lose some kind of connectivity for whatever reason. And again, tested the systems, and somebody else was able to get connected within a matter of a couple of minutes, back up and completely in control of everything. And a lot of the vendors in the space that were part of that project, as we were doing the design and engineering, they'd never seen that before, never knew that anything like that could be done. And they were thoroughly impressed that we were able to do that. So that was really good. I'm glad you were a part of that particular project.
It was definitely a cool one to look at. I still have the pictures from the screens that we stood up with the multiple 42-inch monitors and that whole control room and go. That was a fun time.
Yeah, that was a good time. So what did you do after that?
So went to work for an accounting firm.
Yeah.
Doing SOC auditing, doing ITGCs, doing bank auditing, working with you still, doing some incident response and forensics.
Yeah.
So did that for about 3 years. Traveled a chunk of the country, and it was a lot of fun doing that. Something different.
Yeah. Well, even with everything that you were, you transitioned to, there's a huge component of that's still cybersecurity, but it's more of the evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I equate your skill sets of being able to do that so well as to your entire experience and everything that you've done throughout your entire career. When you're auditing, these systems that you're doing now and doing the evaluations and audits, you're still looking at it from a security perspective and able to evaluate, just how well the organization that you're evaluating, how well their security is, and you can almost just read it like a book to know how good they are, what problems they're having without ever hearing it from them, because you just develop that skill set with what we've saw over our career, the number and the type of incidents that we experienced.
Well, we got to play in a lot of different sandboxes between the University of Oklahoma and having multiple campuses. We've even participated in incidents in other campuses.
Yeah.
Really stinks when they're over Christmas.
Yeah.
But that was different environments and different connectivity. We've got the Texhoma, we've got the Birdavium in Bartlesville, Tulsa campus, HSC in Oklahoma City, and then of course the Norman campus. So we were all over the place, dealing with what we dealt with the gas pipeline that extended outside the state.
Yeah.
And just different environments.
Yeah. Yeah. And now you've moved on to another organization, but still doing kind of the same thing.
I've gotten out of the audits as much, doing more risk assessments, doing more consulting, virtual CISO work, helping businesses, just helping people assess where they are and establish a plan to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, as long as we've been in it, we're, kind of slowing down some, but at the end of the day, the work is not slowing down at all. Cybersecurity is never going to slow down for quite a while.
No, even while we were with the accounting firm, we had a client that was, one of their campuses was asking us a bunch of questions, and those were questions that we'd seen and answered during our tenure at OU.
Yeah.
So, even today, the questions I'm seeing are stuff that we've seen at OU.
Yeah.
And back before 2008.
Yeah. There's probably, I can't think of any incident that's happening today, and you can take that for you name any incident you want to name, any type of attack that anybody has been made aware of. We've seen that and dealt with that more than once while we were at OU.
We have dealt with so many interesting incidents. My favorite was probably the girl that hacked off campus to come back on campus through the VPN.
Yeah. That
was one of the more interesting ones, trying to figure out how to ascertain what was going on and who did it.
Yeah. Yeah, or our Saturday afternoon while we're cleaning up the lab and then mouses are moving by themselves.
No, it's okay. I'm a student. I'm authorized.
Yeah. Fun times. All right, so that has led you to where we're at now, doing this fun stuff as well, and talking to the great people that listen to our channel.
Well, it's about giving back and helping people identify and become better at cybersecurity and moving forward with where they're at. There's a lot of people who just don't get it, and there's dozens, if not hundreds, of people out there doing something similar to what we're doing, but are they connecting with you? My thing is, we each do it a little bit different. We do it Okie style.
Yeah.
So, is this what connects with you? And if it is, great. If it doesn't, hey, there's a bunch of others out there. Just go figure out what helps you and go be better.
Yeah, that's the thing. I remember saying this multiple times in presentations that as throughout my career, and I would say this. The world will know that we're finally making progress with cybersecurity if Grandma and Grandpa at home could pick up the phone, dial 911, and say their computer's been hacked and get a legitimate response.
That's not going to be today or tomorrow.
Not going to be anytime soon. There's so many things wrong with that statement. But, it's true. I mean, when somebody that doesn't know anything about computers knows enough to know that they've been compromised and then can call 911, because you can't call 911 for stuff like that right now.
No.
And then not be laughed at on the other side. You know, that's just not what cops do right at the moment like that for that type of stuff for homeowners. It doesn't work like that.
Well, but, you know, to the local law enforcement's defense, the receiving party is within their jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Where's the offending party?
Yeah. It automatically, almost like any one of those calls, automatically goes to the jurisdiction of the FBI. Well, the FBI is going for the international type crimes, the crimes that are multi-billion dollars, cost multi-billions of dollars to the U.S. economy, or that are serious threats to security. And at home, it's not going to be that
Grandma
way.
and Grandpa's computer getting hacked is not on the multi-billion-dollar list.
No, not. So it's still a crime.
Yeah, it is.
So I mean, it's the equivalent of, oh, your house was broken into and they stole everything in your house, but sorry, it doesn't meet the criteria. It sounds bad, but that's just realistically how it is.
Yeah.
There's a few things that obviously local law enforcement is picking up. Obviously, child predators, child pornography type issues. There were some harassment type issues.
Cyberbullying, all
yeah.
those lines, which they're getting more involved with those from
Yeah.
the social media and the schools.
Yeah, the harassment, different things, but some of them have to be pretty severe.
Yeah.
Stalking, and there's a lot of stalking that takes place, but it's already hard to prove stalking in the first place, and then when you get to the electronic aspect of it, it's still difficult to prove. Although some of it is pretty obvious, but you still have to prove it. I remember used to watch the television show To Catch a Predator, and I mean, it's really cool what they're doing, but that's not reality. That is pure Hollywood. Everything there is staged. I mean, those are real people. They really got arrested, but that operation is not up and running 24/7 at any law enforcement agency. It just doesn't really work that way. In fact, in the state of Oklahoma, the only agency that I know of that really does a good job in cyber crime is the Canadian County Sheriff's Office.
All right. So we did the interview with me, where you were interviewing me. Our people that listen to our podcast got to learn a little bit about me. Your turn.
Oh boy.
So, Calvin, why don't you tell us what you did prior to when you joined OU?
So, my career, I was going to be a cop. In fact, I was a cop. I was a deputy sheriff for Oklahoma County from February of '92. There was a career-ending accident while I was on duty. I wasn't driving, but the deputy I was with lost control of the vehicle and found the only clump of 10 trees in 10 square mile areas, and he had to hit those trees right in on my side, and it basically destroyed my upper right shoulder and ended my law enforcement career right then. But while I was working as a deputy, a deputy only made $18,000 a year back then, and I had to have money. I had to survive. I had to make a living for my family. So I had a computer consulting business. I had that computer consulting business ever since 1990. So I was already making decent money part-time as a technical consultant, computer consultant.
So you had to have a hobby to support your job.
I had to have a hobby to support my job. It was pretty sad. They're not much better now, but still, that was it. That was my career of choice, and IT stuff was the thing I got my degree on. It's just something that I enjoyed. I always did. Always very good at it, and that was it. And so, what I do now, I was never destined to do this. It was the kind of thing that all of a sudden, after I had that accident, I had to do something, obviously, because I was no longer going to be a deputy. I was still with the sheriff's department after all of my recovery and surgeries and everything. The sheriff was said, you know, he's not going to put me back out on the street, but he put me in charge of his computer department. I was there, and I was a deputy in charge of civilian employees.
I'm sure you were quite the sight with your gun and your baton crawling underneath desk looking for Ethernet cables.
Well, it was a pain, and I didn't wear a uniform. You know, I still carried a gun, but I didn't wear a uniform. But yeah, I spent my days working more on technology and doing that. Of course, I did some of that obviously during my career as a deputy. I did a lot of the technology stuff because that was my background, and I did that. And there was a lot of cool things that I was a part of, from the electronic crime investigations and IT work and things like that. I was a part of the District Attorney's Council, where they issued grant money to integrate computer systems in the various different agencies in the state of Oklahoma. And, you know, part of that whole effort is still going on to this day. You know, after I had the accident and I'm still working as a deputy, even though I'm in the IT department now, there were people that worked with me that they're making $40,000 a year. Here I am, I'm making $18,000 a year, and I'm supervising them. And
A little bit of difference there.
so I went to the sheriff and like, you know, what gives? Why are they making more money than me? And I'm their supervisor. And he's like, well, if you want to give up your gun and badge, we'll talk salary, because by law I can only pay you deputy salary. Stupid me. I said no. You know, I'm not giving up my career. You know, I was still trying to hang on to.
It was your dream.
It was my dream. That was it. That was my job. I still continued to do that though, and after about a year of working there in the IT department, doing a lot of technical stuff, technical investigations, things like that as well, there was a recruiter that came along and said that they had a client that was looking for somebody with my unique skills that understood IT and but also understood the law, and it was their way of saying, we need somebody with some security skills. But you know, back then the word security was not a thing. I interviewed, and that's when I went to work for the Department of Defense. I mean, obviously starting out at $65,000 a year from $18,000 a year, I'm going back in the direction that I was making more money then, but I could no longer work as a deputy. So that was officially when I hung it up. I realized the writing on the wall that, you know, I need to stick to technology because it's what I'm really good at. Not really going to be on the streets anymore, not going to happen. And that's whenever I kind of left. But I still kept a gun because I could still serve as a reserve and still continue and help with the electronic investigations and things like that. And I did that for a little while. Work passed through the Y2K issues, you know, and I was on the streets. But for a couple of years, I was working for the Department of Defense. I was designing and engineering top secret classified systems for the Air Force. And that was really good. I learned a lot when it comes to security. Because whenever I was doing security, they had a real thick book, and literally I had to do 100% of every single security guide recommendations that this guide said that I had to do, and not just I had to do it, I had to sign off, date and sign every single step throughout the entire book that I did it, and I had to pass it to somebody else, and they had to double check that. It's top secret classified, right? So I mean I had to do this, didn't have a choice. Learned a lot. You know, all I can say is I learned how to secure systems to the top secret classified level. Can't get much higher than that, right? After that project was over, that was a 2-year project. We're wrapping that up. Worked with a team out of the Pentagon and a team at Tinker Air Force Base. Wonderful team, best team I've ever worked with, even to this day. Sorry, no offense. They were just really good. We brought some of them on board with us at OU, so yeah. We did work with some of them still together. I equate that to good leadership. Not that I knew anything better than anybody else, the leadership there knew how to organize a team. Of course, they're military, right? So organize a team and put tasks together, and the team really functioned very, very well together. I tried to bring as much of that as I could with me throughout my entire career. And I see more of it now than I did when I first left the Department of Defense. But at this point, after 2 years, there was another recruiter come along and says they were looking for somebody with my skill sets to come and to be a part of their organization, and that was the University of Oklahoma, and to come aboard to help them with their security stuff.
Yep, that's when you became the first DITS.
That was the first DITS. So I became the director of IT security, and whenever I went to work there and doing my work there, FBI coming, meeting the leaders, because that was the first, and all of that was just getting started in early 2001, right before 9/11, for all of that, and they wanted to get to know everybody and and help, right, because this is all a new thing. And they come to me one day and said, well, we need to make you aware of a problem. I'm thinking, what did I do, right? They said that they were watching a local hacker group that is paying attention to what I do. And they had my name, had my title, and it was Director of IT Security, and then they put in quotes, I was the DITS. And then underneath that, there was a quote, like I had said something. It said, the quote was, the University of Oklahoma network can't be hacked. I didn't say that. There was somebody else that worked at the university before I got there that actually said that. I would have never said that, although technically I think it was true, because we didn't have a firewall at the time, and you would have to be able to break into the firewall to hack it. So they were just in. It was not they had to hack it. They were just there. So I guess that was kind of true, but I didn't say that.
It is one of the few institutions that we made more secure by making it less secure.
Yeah.
How many places can you say that you installed a VPN and made it more secure?
I know that was, it's a weird conversation to have, because normally it's like I have my network and it's closed. Nobody can get in. Well, we need to be able to get in remotely. How do we do that? Well, you're going to bust a hole in all of that security, and you're going to put in a VPN to allow somebody to connect remotely, and that's as secure as we can make it, and that's going to make your entire environment less secure. But for us, when you had no environment, and the environment said, you're not going to close anything down, you're not going to stop us from doing anything we want to do. Well, when we implemented the VPN, that allowed the people to continue to do everything they were able to do before. So they were totally fine with that. And when they were totally fine with that, then we can build in all the security.
Start closing a few of the ports
that we didn't have, right? So that just kind of worked out. And paying attention to the hacker group, and I was on their home page in the bottom right hand corner, and kind of paying attention. They knew my schedule better than I did. Sometimes I would have to refer to their page to find out what am I doing this week. They would post things that I said in some of those meetings, so obviously somebody was feeding them information from internally. It's amusing. It's kind of creepy back then, but when you're a government employee working for the university, everything you have, everything you do is public information. It's published. So that was no exception. But so it wasn't really that big a deal. But yeah, we were part of that. Of course, very early on, I realized, I was a cop. I knew physical security for sure as a cop, and I did IT stuff. I knew what I was doing. I went to work for the Department of Defense, designing and engineering top secret classified systems. I know security. So when I got to OU, it's like, surprise, you're going to have no staff and you're going to have no budget.
Show us your security.
Yeah. So, again, I wasn't on the server teams. I wasn't on Microsoft team. I wasn't on the Unix team. I wasn't on the networking team. I wasn't on any team. I was I was the director of security for all of the university. And all that meant with no staff and no budget. And so all I could do then is like, okay, the thing you do when nobody thinks that you need staff and you need a budget, we just have to have somebody that is classified as security. And they pointed at me, and there we are. We got security. But the only thing I knew how to do at that point is, well, obviously, the university is not aware that they're not secure. And what does that mean? So I started doing awareness training. And so I established the Train the Trainer program, the T3 program. And all I did was, it's just basic cybersecurity awareness, just basic cybersecurity best practices, if you will. And I designed it so that anybody, any student, faculty, or staff, period, not just IT, anybody could come and take that training. But like nowadays, sometimes, oh, that's that computer stuff. We'll just send our IT people to it. And I was okay with that because, again, the point of the T3 program is I'm going to give you this training for free. Your obligation is you take what you've learned and share it with your other colleagues that didn't come to the training. So it was a way that I could share the awareness and kind of start that whole process very early on. And when I put all that training together, it got nationally recognized. So then I had to go and introduce that program to other universities and other higher education throughout the United States. And it was very well recognized and put me on the National Cybersecurity Task Force among all the higher education, and regularly traveled to Washington, D.C. is where it was based out of, and was part of all of those efforts. And it was a good program to be a part of, to understand the dynamics of the shift and how people were thinking of security and how we were different. So, like, for example, one of the things that we always dealt with when we were there around that time was the DMCA complaints, right? The copyrighted music, Napster. Everybody's downloading this free music, and that's a crime, and the FBI is going to arrest people and all that kind of stuff, right? And we're very familiar with the law because we would get the complaints by email from these law firms. Anonymous law firms. We're the attorneys for Sony, and we've detected that you're in violation of the DMCA Act and your copyright law, blah blah blah. All the stuff they do, and we'd get on average about 300 of those every single month, and we struggle with what to do. And you were a big part of this because, again, you know how to physically find everything. Now keep in mind. Okay, the DMCA, technically, downloading copyrighted protected music it's against the law. You can't do that. Okay, but everything you have on a computer is copyright protected. The software that you run, everything you have there is copyright protected. And if you've got music on there, it's copyright protected. Okay? Well, if somebody's going to send me an anonymous complaint, okay, I can't back that up. Now, you could quickly go find the computer that was in complaint if it was still in the same location. But if it was a student, they could have been connected to Wi-Fi, right? But even once we found the student, the university, I was the university employee here, I can't take their computer.
No, it was their personal property.
It was their personal property. So what could I do? Well, hey, shame on you, don't do that. I mean, that's essentially about all I could do. But the law was very clear. We had to have punishment. We had to identify the culprits. We had to remove that violation from the network, and there had to be punishment. So multiple meetings I've met with, since I was part of the National Cybersecurity Task Force, I met with them, and all the universities, they were spending tons of money. They were going to block peer-to-peer. Peer-to-peer file sharing, they're going to block that. Well, peer-to-peer file sharing is just network technology. It's a good technology.
File share, FTP,
yeah,
on and on.
It's good stuff. Why would you want to block something that's good? Well, it's being used for bad. Okay, again, come back to everything on a computer is copyright protected. how do I'm not the police, how do I know that they're violating somebody else's copyright? Just because they have it on their computer doesn't mean they're in violation. Well, we got a complaint. I understand that, but I'm not the police, and I'm not a jury. I'm not a judge. I can't go and I can't go and do that. So, with the other universities spending hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars to go and block peer-to-peer file sharing, which then technology changed and they were able to get around all the blocks, all those, spend a lot of money just chasing their tail. I met with legal counsel at the university, and we come up with a different approach. The law was very clear that there must be punishment. You ever removed a student's internet connection?
I have.
Oh, it's punishment. They scream, they squeal. Whee! Hey, it's not working. Okay, once you do that, okay, I don't know where they're at, but I can block their machine, right? We, as a part of the network, we knew where they were at, and if they moved, we could block their machine. That removed their machine from being able to talk on our network, because we did own the network, but we didn't own their machine. We were told that they were violating some kind of law. I'm not going to go get their machine. I don't want to go look at that because it's not my machine in the first place. So once we cut it off, they're calling support, the help desk. Hey, it stopped working. And of course the help desk would know that security has turned off their machine for copyright violation or whatever. And the policy was at that point, if they did that, they're going to have to go to legal counsel, and they're going to have to sign a piece of paper that they understand that copyright violation is a serious law and that they have removed the offending copyright from their computer, and they won't do that anymore, right? That was it. Once they did that, legal counsel sent me the letter that it's been signed, and we let turn their computer back on. Worked great. Mm-hmm. And we didn't spend a lot of money doing that, and I remember that we did this, and when we responded, we had to, because the law said you have to respond, right? Now, we would get these anonymously through email, but it was, and I say anonymous, there was no person. It was like the law firm from New York, right?
Not John Smith.
Yeah. So I would take and I would write a letter, an actual letter, not an email, a letter, and address it to that law firm, and I would mail one letter and say everything that we did, we take the violation very seriously, and that we removed the threat, there was punishment, and they were not allowed to get connected until all of their offensive, whatever they were doing was stopped and erased and destroyed. And this was their response, and I signed it. I told them exactly who I was, and I signed it. So even if we got 50 from one law firm, I didn't send one letter. I sent 50 separate letters in the mail back to this law firm saying that we took care of all this and what we did. During that time, there were 2 attorneys that actually reached out and said, "Hey, we get your letters all the time, and we really appreciate you doing this." Now, security team, we already sat and talked about this. So you've got to think, okay, it's on a computer that I don't own. It's on a computer that this law firm don't own. But there's data, there's a song, there's music, movie, or whatever. There's something on that computer that is copyright protected. How do you know that there's a file on that computer?
They had to hack it.
They had to hack it. They had to get into our network unauthorized, because that was illegal for anybody, for any purpose. That was illegal. You can't do that. It was against our policy. And then we told them, you go and get. We told them that you're going to get that. And it's like, this is difficult. We can't do this. How do you do that? So I asked them when they called me, how do you find all of these? We only have 3 campuses in the state of Oklahoma and 100,000 users. And you're doing this for the entire world, and you're finding them so quick. If you'll just tell me how you're finding this copyrighted material on these computers, we'll deploy the same technology and we'll stop it. They both said, we'll get back to you. I'm still waiting for that phone call. Because they know they're violating the law to get to it in the first place. Now there are some techniques now, depending on how some of that actually worked, they could know where it come from. But again, that's still not really everything that they should have disclosed as about what they're doing. But we took care of it. So that those are just some of the funny stories that the weird ways that we took care of things that was unique, that I learned a lot.
Thinking outside the box.
Yeah, yeah. After learning all those lessons and going up against hackers, hackers would hack the network at OU, and they would, blatantly leave trails, right, that we could catch them.
I often question that. Did they blatantly leave a trail, or were they just oblivious to what was actually going on, or failed to believe that an individual could track them?
Yeah, yeah. We had the first, I would call it ransomware, not quite the same as what we have it now, but somebody hacked the machine, took over half of the entire space on the drive.
But they were nice enough to leave a resume.
They left their resume and their photograph and their address of where they lived and everything, and they just noticed that we hadn't secured that. And
well, they were going to secure for us, and
yeah,
most systems were not worthy of them.
Yeah, yeah. But of course, with the amount of storage that we had and the amount of speed on the network, they were definitely going to do that for us at no charge to make sure that they just got to use half of that system and we could have the other half. And of course, we called the FBI, and is in a country that has no laws against that. So unfortunately, it was a humor, it was a lessons learned, and we definitely know how it happened. It was not intentional. It was definitely a mistake.
Don't leave unpatched systems attached to the network in your lunch.
Yeah, and it just is. And of course, we did the experiment. Coming from the environment that I come from, the Department of Defense, those documents that we used to secure top secret classified systems had been declassified, and so we just, I wanted to know, because in that top secret environment, there were only 2 attempts to break into those networks, to my systems during that time frame, and get to OU, and there were, attacks all day, every day, going on, all kinds of attacks, it was just all the time. And it wasn't unique because it was University of Oklahoma. All universities are that way. I mean, they're academic freedom, they're a little bit different environment.
It was truly a learning environment. After we got acid stood up and snort,
yeah,
we could literally pick which incident we wanted to work that day.
Yeah, you just pick one. Whatever sounded good to you, whatever you've not worked before, whatever looked interesting, just pick one and work it. It was a good time to learn cybersecurity. It's a good place to learn cybersecurity. I don't know so much anymore. We still know people that are there. It's the environment of how they handle things are different now than the way we handled them then. I like the way we handled all of our incidents and what we did. And we talked about this of, I can easily say that while we were there at OU, we improved security 1,000%. Guaranteed. I mean, just unbelievable the security stuff that we did. But when you compare that to say, well, here's all of the best practices, here's what an organization should be doing, we maybe hit about 10%.
I think that's a little generous at 10%.
Maybe, but I mean, even what little that we did made a major impact.
Well, the biggest change is from 0 to 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a lot learned about the easy security implementation. All you got to do is push this button and it just does it. There was even though again, I was in charge of cybersecurity, but I was not in charge of the IT. So sometimes different IT people around the university, they had their own idea of what they needed to do to secure their systems. And not to talk bad about anybody, but obviously, a non-IT person that knew how to turn on a computer with one college, the College of, say, Music, it's not their fault. They're the only one who knows how to turn on a computer. They're the IT and security for that entire college. Where then you have another college, College of Engineering, which you were kind of a part of that whole thing. It's night and day. Not only did you know good security, you were practicing good security, and you were advocating for more security for the university than what we could actually do as a whole.
We were a rather nimble group.
Yeah, yeah, and we had to be flexible. I mean, that's a university environment. But when you look at what we've learned and how we apply that today to organizations, every organization is different. Every organization has different needs.
But that environment provided us an education that we can apply in almost any environment.
You could, and you know, you hear this quite often. What we always said is, many things can take down your network and shut down your operations and shut down your business. We didn't want security to be one of them, so we did not come in and say, no, you can't do that. It was, okay, they want to do that. They're going to do it with or without us. How can we help them do it as secure as possible? And
always a challenge.
it was always a challenge. We learned a lot of how to do some of the things we did, and when we deployed things at OU and then subsequent as we do now, we come up with unique solutions to handle the desires of an organization, even against our own recommendations. But again, it's a matter of there's no amount of money that will 100% stop an attack from happening.
No.
There's none. So if you can't do that, then why can't they just share their music the way they want to? Why not? Okay, it's up to you and me as the security professionals to figure out how they can do it legally and securely.
Apple Music.
Apple Music, right? Spotify. There are ways of doing it now, right?
Those didn't exist during that juncture.
Yeah, but it's those kind of things. It's like they're asking for things to be done, and then we always ask the question. Okay, yeah, can that be done? Yeah, it can be done. How much money do you want to spend to protect your organization from things that you probably shouldn't be allowing in the first place?
You mean sharing out the whole hard drive is a bad thing?
Well, sharing out the C drive to the world could be a problem, right?
But you don't understand. I have my research.
Yeah. So, learned a lot at the university. But before I finished the university, obviously, with all of my dealings with all of law enforcement, all the things I was doing, obviously everything that I did was public.
Well, you were also part of EDUCAUSE.
Part of EDUCAUSE. Everything I was doing was public, right? I mean, it wasn't hidden. It's anything I wanted to be private, it was never going to be private, just because of the nature of the university and my position being so public. So one of the things that came out of that was there were a lot of attorneys then that started reaching out to me and saying, hey, you're that guy that at OU that does all the security and the forensic stuff. And of course I was, because we'd started the digital forensics lab at the university, started doing a lot of the forensics investigation because of incident response.
We worked with FBI,
Yep.
Norman PD, OU PD.
Yep. OSBI.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Well, when we were doing that got the attention of some attorneys, and they would reach out to me, and they wanted to know if I would help them in their case, civil cases, not criminal cases, but civil cases. And I got the authority and permission from my boss, the CIO, Dennis Abersald, to do that work on the side. And again, now I'm in a situation that I was in whenever I was in law enforcement. I was working part-time, making more money part-time than I was working full-time at the university. And the university paid me very, very well, being their director of IT, their first basically CISO position. And so immediately I realized I'm making a lot of money here. I need to formalize a business and not just do it as an individual. So I started my practice while still at the University of Oklahoma, doing it part-time, which you were, again, part of that very early stages of that. And it come a point in my career at the university that I'm traveling a lot for the university, doing working with other higher education, doing presentations, education, doing the stuff that we do at OU, doing my responsibility as the director of security. and then the conflict of my business, and there's more and more demand on my business. So it was then I decided, the university environment, I'm not ever getting a promotion. It doesn't work that way. I'm not ever going to become the CIO there or an executive vice president at the university. If I did, I would have to leave and probably go somewhere else and probably out of state. And that's not something I was wanting to do.
You would need to have a PhD.
There was that, and I wasn't going to go down that road. So it was really easy for me. I'm on top of the world. I was nationally recognized for the work I was doing at OU in cybersecurity. It's a great time for me to leave before any of that changes, because I knew that if the CIO ever retired, and he was already talking about retiring, a new CIO would take over. They would probably bring in their own people, and then I would no longer be in that position. And that's just the way it worked. That works at many organizations that way, but at a university, that's the way it would work. So I decided while I'm there, on top, I would leave there, and I got a wonderful letter from my CIO, from Dennis Abersol. He didn't want to see me go, but he knew that he wasn't going to be able to keep me there because, everything that I had already accomplished, everything that I had already done, there's no way that he could compete with that. So at that point, he gave me a wonderful letter of accommodation, talking about the great accolades and everything that I had done for him and for the university, and I still have that letter. It's wonderful, but I left and I started my own practice and doing digital forensics and cybersecurity and incident response. I had that practice from 2003, and I left the university in 2006. I had my individual practice, my solo practice until 2014, where it was acquired by another firm. You worked with me a little bit with my company, Calvin Weeks and Associates. After my company was acquired by a bigger company, hired me and all of my staff and brought you on board shortly after that to work at that same organization that bought it out, and here we are. We're still doing that, and I'm now at a point in my career. I've learned so much, and organizations are now hiring me to help them put together their processes and procedures to do forensics or cybersecurity or incident response, and I still spend a lot of my time doing that when I'm not here doing this with you.
Didn't you also stumble into a contract with a government agency to do some training?
Yeah, so for quite a while, from 2000, I want to say it was 2004, I think it was. Again, the Department of Defense, or actually the Department of Homeland Security, was looking for somebody to teach their curriculum for cyber terrorism, incident response, and handling. And so they contracted me to come in and teach that course, and then to continue further develop that course. So as new technology changes went to that course, then I was heavily involved with the development of the labs, the content, the courses, all of that, and I still continue to do that to this day.
Now, are you also still doing some adjunct professoring for not
Yeah.
OU?
Yeah, OSU, they still have me adjunct. I teach their cybersecurity at Oklahoma State University, and been doing that since 2000, probably 2006, 2007 as well. Quite a while. Do a little bit. All of it that I do, I only do it because it's fun. My career is changing. Our career is changing. It's good to be able to look now at the younger generation and look to see how excited they are to find out something new. And we're looking at that as like, yeah, we've been there, we've done that many times over. But they look at it differently. And it's good to hear their perspective, because they don't come with the baggage that we come with, because we learned it the way we learned it. They're learning it a little differently with a little different perspective. I'm not saying they're right, I'm not saying they're wrong, I'm not saying we're right or we're wrong. It's just different. That's one of the things we did learn at OU, is that there's there's many different ways of doing the same thing that's
There are,
different,
but
but it's just as good.
Think back to our days, though. We were dealing with worms, we were dealing with viruses,
Yeah,
and that has morphed into about the Benjamins,
Yeah.
ransomware.
ransomware.
And, we dealt with hacks, Dameware.
Yeah,
We dealt with lots of hacks, lots of defacing.
yeah,
But you don't see the defacing like you once did. They now want to utilize the box.
yeah. Yeah, the zombie thing, I mean, the botnets were a big thing, and they still are, but they're a little different. It's a little different. I mean, they have libraries, databases full of, machines that they control. They're not taking them down. I mean, the days of infecting machines to take them down, those are gone. If you do have something of value, you're going to get ransomware, and you're going to get exploited for money. If you're at home and you get ransomware, it's because you stumbled across the wrong link. You did something, because they're usually not after the homeowners, because the homeowners aren't going to pay the tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars to get their files back. It's not going to happen. So, but they want your computer at home because they can use your computer to go and hack somebody else, or hack the FBI, or hack whoever.
And as we mature, as IT matures, more and more organizations are starting to realize that they're not doing business outside the continental United States. So they're starting to do geo-blocking, preventing those other areas. I was just on the phone with a client this morning, and they had geo-blocked out certain areas, but because the system was not appropriately checking on the IP, they were spoofing the source IP and still getting in.
Yeah.
So they'd source blocked Russia, but the Russians were making it look like it was coming from Great Britain, and the system was allowing it in.
Yeah.
But as you said, the newer generation's learning differently. They're learning the same things that we dealt with during our times.
Yeah. Yeah. You look at. I mean, there's new languages, like there's all kinds of different types of phishing, vishing, whatever.
Schmishing.
Yeah, all of those, right? And at the end of the day, you and I learned it as social engineering.
Yeah.
And that's really all it is. It's just using a different technique, maybe new technology, but it's still the same. It's still the same thing. It's social engineering. They're just trying to convince you to do something, give them something to take advantage of you and whatever you have that they want. So, and even if it's just a means to get somewhere else, that's what they do. That's it. It's either through social engineering or through a vulnerability that you didn't patch. That's it. There is no other way, except for if you physically steal it, but that's a whole other problem. It's totally different.
So you've also done audio video for your church.
Yeah. We've had a huge production a little bit before COVID, but especially when COVID hit. I mean, everything went to, AVL, audio, visual, live stream kind of stuff, and do a lot with that, and do a lot of video editing, and took advantage of it, for us. I think it's a great opportunity. You and I talked about it for quite a while. We had plans on doing this during COVID as well, but we kind of started late because of our own personal issues and tragedies, and just wasn't the right time, and it just kept dragging. And
Getting older causes health issues.
It does.
We're not as young as we once were.
Yeah. So we've worked through all the issues, and we're still growing. As you can see, we got new technology. Part of the purpose for getting this technology versus what we were using, it's great podcast equipment. So we're going to turn some of these into podcasts as well, and do some other stuff with podcasting. So, good stuff.
Anything else you want to add? I mean,
Yeah.
you've picked back up on the DHS contract. You're doing that again.
There was a delay, obviously, with me and COVID and other stuff, but yeah, it's picked back up. They're wanting me to come and teach it, and I am. I'm already scheduled to go and teach for the Department of Homeland Security. It's through the University of Arkansas. The contract is. So, looking forward to that. It's a good time. This is a good time to be in cybersecurity, and especially with the experience and knowledge that you and I have. There's not anything that's out there that has happened, or I think that will happen, that we haven't seen some form of it at some point in our career. We couldn't handle whatever it is that's out there, and understand it at a different level than what some of the younger generation talks about it. IT people in general. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. You know, it's like, oh, let me tell you about the gigahertz and megahertz and the petabytes and terabytes. Yeah, and it's like, that's great for you and I, but at the end of the day, for the majority of people, if we're really going to make an impact on cybersecurity and really help the majority of the people that are becoming victims, right? All the consumers, the people at home, we really need to talk about it at a different level and have it be something more of a conversation than.
Well, and as you pointed out, we have matured in our careers and our perspectives, and we're now trying to give back to the general populace and trying to do it in a non-technical terms that works for our audience. That's our objective.
Yeah. And so far, at least our audience is telling us it's working. So with that, if you like this content and you want to see more of it, please subscribe. Please like. I know I repeat this, but it's very, very important. It helps us share our content with everybody else. Hit the notification button so that you will get notified.
Joe, that one's for you.
And if you got any questions, please comment and we will respond. We'll try to respond to anybody that gives us a comment. We're doing this the way we are on purpose. If it's not correct, put it in the comments. Maybe we can talk about it a different way. Again, from a technical perspective, we want to try to stay away from some of the technical stuff. If you're a technical person and you really want to talk technical with us, let us know. We'll set up something. We want to do some interview style stuff, and we won't shy away from the technical stuff. But as you talk technical, we're going to try to dumb it down for for my children, my grandchildren to understand it.
Wait a minute, your grandchild's how old?
He's not quite 1.5 yet.
All right, that's going to be a bit of a challenge.
Well, I remember, I started on computers when I was about 12 years old. My daughter started on a computer when she was about 8, and my son started on the computer when he was 2. And
I'm sure that your grandson can work the iPad better than you.
He definitely knows how to get his way around a cell phone. Not that he knows what he's doing, but he can definitely get around on a cell phone. And that's just it. That's this generation. They come at it from a different perspective. We used to do the education for internet safety for teens, and that was the kind of thing. It's like, okay, who knows better to teach somebody about what they do on the computers than the teenagers themselves? Because it wasn't the adults that were going to go tell them, you can't do that. It doesn't work that way. In fact, when we were younger, we had the phones that were attached to cords on the wall, and we got the extra long one so we could stretch it all the way to our room and talk on the phone. And even then, the parents didn't like it. Get off the phone. You're talking too much on the phone. Nobody else can use the phone. That's the way it was. We don't have that problem anymore. There's no cords, and everybody's got a phone, even the young kids, which then that creates other issues and other problems. So with the new generation, the technology is just in their lives from the day they were born, whereas we did not get involved with it till much later in our career. And when I say I was 12, that was that Radio Shack color computer and TRS-80.
Trash 80.
Quickly progressed from there. But doing system integration, building my own computers, manufacturing and reselling my own computers, that definitely taught me quite a bit. So definitely a career, both of us, with things that we bring to the table. Looking back on my career, I remember some of the older generation that were there. They were talking about their mainframe stuff, the things they were doing, which mainframes actually still exist, believe it or not. But the things they did, the things they taught me was their methodology of very strict. You have to do it this way. You have to do it this way. You have to do it this way. And you hear a lot of that kind of talk in cybersecurity, which there's some good things to that, but there's also some bad. At some point, yeah, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. But if we're going to have everybody at home, the non-technical people, understand the threats to them, their identity getting stolen, their maybe their tax papers being stolen and returns being filed before they get a chance to file their tax returns or whatever. However they become a victim of fraud whenever they go to buy a house and somebody gets in on the transaction, a hacker gets in on the transaction and steals money from them. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars that's just money that a lot of the consumers just don't have in their pocket. They become victims. So hopefully we can talk about all of those issues and continue with this and help them understand what's happening and how they look out for it and what can they do. So with that, we appreciate it. Thank you for having our conversation with us.
Okie style.
Until next time, we are
The original security guys.